I've been in the field of wildlife control for over 30 years now. I've seen my share of raccoons, squirrels, skunks, birds breaking into houses. And I wouldn't be in business 30 years if I didn't figure out how to keep them out. And it took some trial and error. Day one, we didn't really know exactly how to do it and how to do it effectively to have a long-lasting solution. But over time, and there are new developments, and we'll talk about these in the building industry, that are creating new challenges for us and making it easier for wildlife to get into homes. So we'll start the presentation. When an animal looks at a neighborhood such as this, it sees one huge buffet. The first house probably has a bird feeder in the backyard, so there's a snack for a raccoon, a meal for a squirrel. The second house is feeding their cat in the back balcony. The third house has a green bin at the side door, and that green bin is outside because it stinks too much to stay inside, and the raccoons have figured to open that up, and that, if the raccoon pops open that green bin, he's got a meal that would last him a week. And the third house is the real bonus house. That's the house that has the person that's feeding the raccoons and squirrels and skunks. So the only disadvantage in this neighborhood, and in almost every neighborhood we deal with, is very few homeowners take it upon themselves to animal-proof a house. So also when a raccoon or a squirrel looks at this neighborhood, they see a vacancy sign on every front lawn. This poor little guy was caught. We didn't happen just to be at the site when he's trying to break in the bin. He had put his arm in as he normally would unlatch the lock. The homeowner, if you look closely, you can see there's a lot of teeth marks and scratch marks on the actual opening of the lid. So he had been in this bin before, but they had put some huge bricks on top. So he slid his hand in and couldn't pull it back out. But the green bin in Toronto, I don't know what it is, what exactly other municipalities are doing, like in Vancouver and such, but it has become a real problem for a population boom in raccoons in the city. And until the city realizes this and starts to address this, we're going to continue to have conflicts in huge numbers. Den sites are abundant, and houses, whether they're old or new, are all creating opportunities for animals to break in. And both raccoons or squirrels, in my mind, are mini home inspectors. They will find, if you have a flaw on your roof that you would never find on your own, an animal will find it. And we'll talk about a lot of those today. Now, there is good animal proofing and there is bad animal proofing. This is a homeowner's attempt to keep a skunk out from under their porch. This obviously took a few hours and a few dollars in plastic forks and knives. But their idea behind this was the skunk would come out from under the porch, and they had the trap set up which baited with sardines. So if it was inside the porch, it would actually get caught. And if it was already out at the time they set all this up, it wouldn't dare to cross those plastic forks. Some other types of animal proofing that homeowners take on, and even our competition, can be downright dangerous. This is an attempt of a homeowner to keep a bird out of a dryer vent. This situation is dangerous because dryer vents are meant to expel the lint from the clothes. And when you put something in the way of that, the lint will back up. Research shows the #1 reason for house fires in all of Canada are dryer fires. Dryers must be able to expel the heat in order for the motor to stay cool. And if you can't expel the heat because of a buildup of lint, you'll actually cause the motor to overheat and a fire to occur. So there are certainly do's and don'ts with wildlife control, or wildlife prevention. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to look at a house from the ground up, including what's around the house on the outside. And then we'll work up the walls, and then we'll get to the eaves trough level. We'll look at situations that animals exploit at the eaves trough level. And then we'll go up on the roof and look at things such as roof vents and chimneys. So before we even get to the house itself, we need to look at what is making it easy for an animal to get on top of my roof. Because an animal that can't get on your roof or finds it difficult to get on your roof will pick your neighbor's house that has a TV antenna or the roof or the tree or the vine growing up the side of the house in order to get onto that roof. So trimming back trees are important. Vines should at least be 3 feet from the eaves trough level. And I had a customer going back about 10 years now that had 2 100-year-old oak trees near their house. And he had a mother and raccoons currently living in his attic. So he hired a tree company, $1,000 a pop, to take those 2 trees down. He was very disheartened the next morning when he heard the mother raccoon come back into the attic after she scaled the downspout to get back in the house. So I don't recommend taking trees down to solve animals from getting onto the roof, because there's other ways you can protect the roof. But certainly to trim back where you can is good advice. So as we get to the perimeter where the building touches the ground, we have window wells. Now these window wells can become a trap for certain animals. Skunks can't climb very well, so what happens is as they walk around the perimeter of the house, and they like to stay close to the edge of the building, and as they walk, the bottom falls out of them as they get to the window well, and they end up falling down, and they're trapped in there. And if someone doesn't see them or discover them, then they will die eventually. So by installing a device that I'll show you in a second, you can save animals' lives as well as preventing them from wanting to live there. Raccoons will commonly choose window wells to actually have their babies and raise their young. In this case, we have 5 baby raccoons at the base of this. Sometimes it'll be wide out in the open at the side of the house. You can just simply walk up to it and look in. Other times that window well will be under a deck, more secluded and more hidden. The solution is 2 types of ways of preventing this. Now, if this was an egress window, which is a window that is needed for an escape for a tenant, you cannot install a screen in such a manner because you literally lock the tenant in the house in the event of a fire. So this window did not open, so we could screen it and prevent an animal from being able to climb inside and either a skunk or a raccoon having their babies. This is a much cheaper option, but not bulletproof. Raccoons can break these apart or pull them away from the wall and climb inside, and I've seen that before. But it certainly will stop the skunk from wandering past and falling inside. Ground level still, raccoons and skunks love to live underneath decks. What happens at certain times of the year, the first time a mother raccoon gets her babies to climb down off of a roof onto ground level, she doesn't stand a very good chance of getting those babies back into the attic the next few days because they haven't really learned to climb. So she'll take the very first deck she sees in close proximity where she already was living and move her family underneath. And this is why during the summer months we get a very drastic increase in calls away from raccoons living in attics and more living at ground level under decks. This is a typical skunk entry point. They will just come up to the side of a structure, dig straight down until they have enough clearance to get underneath. And we can't just screen the point of entry here because the skunk or raccoon would simply move to the right or left and dig its way back underneath. So we have to do the whole perimeter of the structure. If we're going to solve it once and for all, we dig down 6 to 8 inches, we place the screen straight off the edge of the deck to the ground, and then bend the screen outwards about another 6 to 8 inches, and then that all gets filled back in. So if an animal is to return to try to get in, it will again dig up close to the structure, dig down, reach the plateau of screen, try maybe 2 or 3 spots at a time, and then eventually move on and find one that's more accessible. So moving up the wall, we looked at that dryer vent earlier that was inappropriately screened. Starlings are cavity dwellers. They want to get into hollow trees, openings in buildings, but these vents, especially in new subdivisions, are a real target for starlings. And what they do is they land on the bottom lip of the plastic. They use their beak to flip open the louver, and in they go. And when they build a nest, they build a huge nest. They build a nest generally 4 feet long, completely blocking a 3-inch diameter pipe, and then they lay their eggs on the pipe right in front of it. I guess in most cavities they're not completely horizontal. You'll have a bit of a dip, so then they would put the eggs in the nest. But it's quite humorous. They go to all this extent. I think they just keep building and building and building, thinking at some point they might be able to sit on the nest, and realize they can't, so then they lay their eggs. This is a baby starling. Handsome, isn't he? Yeah, primarily we'll get them from egg stage right up until they're ready to be fledged. Baby birds that we remove from these type of events go into a jug, and this is a method that we developed over time. Initially, when we first started out 30 years ago, we would take these baby birds to the Humane Society, and they have to be fed every 3 to 4 minutes. So they didn't like to see us coming with these baby birds. So eventually we decided that we need to have a better way of dealing with these, and we started taking a 2-liter pop bottle, and then we graduated to not antifreeze, but a windshield washer jug washed out, and cut a rectangular hole in the front of it, bend up the flap, put some of the nest inside, put the babies inside, and attach the jug with the babies right beside the vent opening. And within minutes, the parents will be back, continuing to feed. The homeowner's happy, the insects aren't in the nest, the smell isn't there, the vent continues to work, and everybody's good. And then we return a month later to actually to remove the jug, and everybody's, as I say, is happy. So this is the type of screening we do with respect to these vents. We need to box it out in such a way so that the louvers can continue to open. They need to open to let the air flow. And it also, in the case of a dryer vent, it still needs to be monitored. The lint actually gets out to the screen, dries off, and eventually will remove itself, hopefully. If not, at least every 6 months, the screen needs to be cleaned in order to prevent it from backing up inside. We're now at the eaves trough level. If you have a garden growing out of your eaves trough, it's not a good idea. You can tell this eaves trough probably hasn't been cleaned in many years, and an actual tree is starting to grow out of it. What tends to happen is when water can't shed itself out of the eaves trough properly, it backs up and flows over the eaves trough in the wrong direction towards the wood, and that wood often isn't painted, it's just bare wood. It quickly reabsorbs that water and dries out, and eventually you get dry rot. Animals are very keen on exploiting wood that isn't structurally sound. They will get to it, and they'll start to pick at it, and more times than not, as you can see here, they'll make their way past it and get inside the attic. Not all houses are built the same, and many houses are built such as this one. The roof board that the shingles are attached to and the fascia board that the eaves trough is attached to should overlap if the house was built properly. If we look closely here, we can see there's a space between these two boards. And anytime an animal can get its nose into that space, it will have a free edge of wood to chew on. And as it is able to chew, it may take a week, it might go back there for an hour at a time, or it may do it in one night. But as long as there's a structural flaw at the roof edge, your chances of having a wildlife problem in the long term is pretty good. I'm just going to show you a quick video here. This is a squirrel entry hole on the corner, just to demonstrate coming out. He's about to be scared by me on the roof. That's in slow motion. For the first week where they actually venture outside the den, you might get 5 or 6 out on the roof playing while mom's away somewhere. And as soon as they feel threatened, one after the other, often bumping into each other, trying to single file go quickly into an entry hole. When we do inspections for animal entries, even though what the customer is describing to us is definite squirrel behavior, squirrel activity in the attic, it's not always easy for us to find a point of entry. You're not seeing the broken shingles, you're not seeing an obvious opening, and in this particular case, we actually went back to the house twice to find the point of entry. So the next slide, I removed this corner shingle to show you the actual point of entry. And this was a red squirrel. This hole is about the size of a golf ball. So it's not always easy to identify where the structural flaw might be that they will exploit. So I would think even if I had a call out to animal proof this house before they had wildlife, that situation may have been overlooked. I'm a true believer, if you take care of the roof of your house, the rest of the house tends to take care of itself. Not with respect necessarily with animals not being able to get back in, but with the rotten wood on the eaves trough, water damage inside, mold problems, all of that. You should really pay close attention to what's going on your roof and get it. This particular roof should have been probably replaced 7 to 10 years prior to this picture being taken. And one of the situations that we see, now you would look at this and say, how in the world could you have prevented that? Because it's in the middle of the roof. Who would have anticipated? There was no structure there before. A raccoon simply came up, started picking at the shingles that were flat as the shingles around it, and eventually got to the wood underneath, broke it apart, and got inside. On close inspection of that hole, and you can actually see the gray staining to the right of that hole, water had been leaking through the roof for some time. Maybe on a previous roof, maybe the homeowner didn't replace the roof in time on the previous, when the previous roof was on. They reshingled over a weakness in the roof structure. Raccoons have an amazing ability to detect rot, and it doesn't matter where it is. I guess they smell it, and then eventually they will dig away at it until they get inside. So moving further up the roof, again, this is what we call a plumbing vent pipe. It is meant to allow wastewater, or to allow air to follow the wastewater from your plumbing system out to the street. Without that, it's like the analogy of using a straw in a cup of Coke, and you put your finger over the top of the straw and you lift your straw out, it holds the Coke. If that pipe ever gets clogged inside, like an animal climbs inside it, your plumbing system will fail. So we want to protect against animals climbing inside these pipes, and one of my employees went out on a job, and the neighbor called because he saw the rear end of a squirrel sticking out of the back of the pipe. And my guys know that I am emphatical about taking pictures of situations, and all these slides you see today were either taken by myself or my staff. So anyways, that's another point. Gets me angry when they have great situations that I can share with you and they don't take the picture. So when this pipe is installed, when the house is first built, they don't always put the pipe through a 3-inch diameter hole because they need to manipulate the pipe into its final position. So they often cut a much bigger hole than is necessary. Raccoons teach their babies, if the mother raccoon is using this as a point of entry, we will stand up on a rooftop and look around at the houses in the close proximity, and almost all of those houses will have this type of entry point. So this behavior of how to break into a house is passed on generation after generation. So it's only a rubber membrane, so it literally would take them 5 minutes to break through it. So our solution to protect it is to put a screen mat over top of the rubber. It gets screwed to the roof. The screws get caulked, prevent water damage, and we put a lid on the top to keep animals from climbing inside. And that we charge $20 to put that lid on, and it's probably the best $20 you'd ever pay if an animal ever went down the pipe and clogged your plumbing system, because you'd have to break the walls open, hopefully in the place where the animal is, cut the pipe, take the animal out, put the pipe back together, put the wall back together, then repaint. So good money, worth its value. I gotta love roofers in the years 2014 and back probably the last 4 or 5 years, because they've gone away from the metal roof vents. And the metal roof vents were still, raccoons and squirrels were still able to get through them, but they've gone to a plastic roof vent, which is totally easy for any animal to get in, and usually within minutes. So they've created a lot of business for me in installing these these plastic roof vents. God bless their hearts. And I'd just like to show you a quick video of a raccoon in one of these vents.
Busted.
Still hasn't lost his winter fat, as you'll see here. There we go. My technician got rewarded for taking that video. So here's another, again, plastic roof vent. You can see all the pieces of plastic that have been chewed around the roof below the vent. Again, a squirrel has gone in through here. And roof vents, for those of you who may not know building structures, are put on the roof to allow the hot air in the attic to escape during the winter months, or sorry, in the summer months, because you don't want that hot, moist air in the attic because it'll only cause mold and it'll break down the actual structure. So once they get into this vent, they are in the house without a question. Why this squirrel decided not to go in the house and build its nest under the roof vent, but it managed, by stuffing so much nesting material in there, the actual roof vent popped up, and she had her babies in there. Good mixture of black and gray squirrels in there. So we simply boxed the vent in with our screen. We use 16 gauge galvanized inch by inch mesh, and this mesh can't be damaged by the animals. In fact, the Toronto Zoo uses this exact mesh to keep the Bengal tigers in, so it gives you an idea how strong it is. The next, we're almost getting to the end here. The next point of entry that is very common on rooftops is whenever you have a side split or a back split where two roofs overlap, and the soffit of the upper roof has to terminate somewhere, and it terminates generally at the roof. So we're looking up at the eaves trough and soffit area. I want to show you a video of a raccoon coming out of this soffit vent. She's coming out to get one of her babies. So when they build that actual structure, when they first construct the house, they very rarely attach that aluminum because it's such a tight space. They can't get in there with screws or hammers to actually get the aluminum tight. And raccoons have learned that if they get into that space and they can stand on the roof below, they can either bend the metal out of the way or simply use it as a trapdoor, as you saw in the video. And although not always pretty, the only way to really prevent animals from getting into these areas is to screen the soffit for a fairly decent length, because if the raccoon's going to stand on the roof and reach up, you don't want them to be able to manipulate the aluminum. You want them to be grabbing onto our screen. So that is how we keep them out of those spots. And similar to where we talked about skunks getting under a deck, you have to do the whole perimeter of the deck. If there are structures similar to this on the roof, like there's maybe 2 or 3 structures that are identical to this, they all need to be screened, even if the animal's not using them. And if there's one roof vent that the animals are using, you need to do all the roof vents because they'll simply go to the next one. Chimneys are often a great spot for raccoons. It resembles a hollow tree in the wild for them. But they also become danger zones for squirrels and birds because when they fall down these open chimneys, unless the homeowner recognizes that there is something in the chimney, they will die of starvation. A bird needs to be able to fly forward in order to fly up, so it can't fly straight up the chimney. In this case, a squirrel may be able to climb this brickwork to get out, but often they're clay lined and it's very smooth, so they can't make the trip. So we install, again, using the same screen, a screen enclosure. It gets crimped to the clay piece so that it cannot be pulled off by an animal. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This poor raccoon, in the middle of the night, I think it was 2 o'clock in the morning, decided to go through the princess's doggy door. You can see the name tag on the door. Managed to get into the big bag of dog food, not just the bowl with the dog food. He got the big bag of dog food, and obviously ate too much to get himself back out the door. So we had to go, again, at 2 o'clock in the morning, completely dismantle the door, and let the raccoon go. You can see how embarrassed he is. So basically sums up my presentation. if you're interested in this type of stuff, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We have videos all over the place. I invite you to like us, follow us, or subscribe to us. And even on our website, we also have videos. Our adventures are never ending, and rarely are they ever the same. So it's fun. I love my job. I am very fortunate to do what I do, and thank you for listening.